Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Roswell, New Mexico. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's kind of break it down. Kyle learned a lot of interesting things. Obviously, he's trying to trail a lot of stuff about his dad. He ends up going to like a hunting cabin, and lo and behold, who he's running to? Alex. And we kind of learned that him and Alex were actually friends when they were younger until around the time, Kyle found out that Alex was gay. And, around that time, it's like, Kyle was a bit of an asshole back in high school and stuff like that. It's something Liz had talked about before. And so we kind of understand a little more context to it. It's like, because Alex justifies it, well, not justified, but in his mind, it's like, the reason why you acted like a total asshole to me is because, I was gay. Like, everyone was already in the process of figuring it out, and you thought that if you were nice to me, the people would think you were gay too, so that was his way of battling that. And then we also learned more about, Alex's situation from his dad. Because there was that remark his dad made, like, a couple episodes ago. I was like, hey, wait, is that supposed to be like effect is, like, almost like, you suppose how he handles himself in public and stuff like that. Part of me was like, is that supposed to be reference to him being gay? I was wondering if that was what that was all about, and it turns out it is. Because his dad's actually known since he was very young. Apparently, his dad tried to beat the gay out of him, which is super sad. Because we learned so much, because obviously they found out, like, oh man, there's this little, that little bunker room that Jim, Kyle's dad had and everything. And it's like, the room was all set up like that. I'm like, oh man, don't tell me this is like his little love pin or something like that. But it turned, because Alex was like, there's no way your dad would do that. Like, your dad never took advantage of, a distraught teenager. Because, like, for Alex, it's like, your dad looked out for me when I was going through such a tough time at home and stuff like that. Because the reason why he left this cabin to me and not to you is because he wanted to give, Alex a safe place to go to get away. Like, Kyle didn't need it. Kyle had, his mom was great. He was doing good. Like, he needed, but Alex needed kind of a safe space away from his monster of a dad, which is so interesting. I guess that's kind of the whole part of this too, because like the whole thing of like, oh, aliens being monsters and stuff like that, but humans can be just as monstrous. And we can see that in his case. It's like, oh, he's up here hunting aliens and stuff like that. Like, they're monsters when he's a monster all on his own. But it turns out, like, that whole room wasn't about, like, oh, that's where he does this freaky thing with people and stuff like that. It's like, no, because there was nothing between him and Rosa in that regard. What ended up happening and being the case is the fact is that he was actually helping her detox there, keeping her there. And then looking at a photo, there's, like, a blanket that says an R. And, I figured it out just when Kyle did. It's like, Rosa. Rosa is Kyle's half-sister. Like, one of the people because Kyle had brought it up early in the episode. He ended up finding out that his dad had a whole bunch of affairs and stuff like that. Plus, he was, he basically went at rehab like 2 different times for alcoholism. And now it seems like those 2 factors are, I guess, like, after getting sobered up, like, he wanted to kind of make things right, for the daughter that he had that he wasn't taking care of. So, and he saw what she was going through, and with what he went through with his rehab, like, oh, let me do this to her. I've got to do this as a father, So maybe that's what Rosa was dealing with the most as time went on, because she learned that, like, her dad isn't actually her dad. That's why her dad had brought it up last episode, being like, Rosa stopped talking to him and just started lying. It's because she found out the truth and she was just dealing with it on her own. She didn't tell anybody about it. And that and this is me basing on the fact is that maybe Jim told her the truth. I'm thinking he did, and I think that ultimately led to her kind of being rebellious like she was near the end, just kind of spiraling like that, is because she found out all of that, so we'll kind of have to wait and see on that. But now it changes everything, which maybe that came up before. Does that mean Rosa and Liz have a different mom? Because I was about to say, because it's like, that would still make it so that Liz and Kyle still wouldn't be related, but it still would be weird. So it's like, no, they still have the same mom. But because in my head I was thinking, like, oh, that's still weird because you hooked up with your half sister's sister, which in a sense kind of makes her your sister, but not really. But it's like, no, like, the way the family thing would break down, it's like, no, that's how that wouldn't work. It'd be weird, but but it's not like I was thinking it was. I was like, no, it's not as weird as I think it is. I mean, when you think about it in the context of everything, it's kind of like, oh man, that's kind of crazy. You're hooking up with your half sister. But the fact of the matter is, But I think that's got to be the secret that, like, I mean, and I'm assuming that, Rosa's dad knows. Not like it's something like Rosa and Liz's mom kept her and him in the dark about it. It's like he had to know. And like I said, I think that's why she got all rebellious and stuff. So now Kyle's dealing with all of this stuff, because it's interesting, because now it adds a lot more context to what Sheriff Valenti was talking about like all the stuff of like, oh yeah, let your dad's past stay in the past. It wasn't like something terrible like the whole him and Rosa thing, or maybe at the very least, maybe she thought the same thing too and just kind of left it at that. Or maybe it is the fact is, if like, oh, he had a child with someone else, he had all these affairs and all this, because it's like your dad was a hero in your eyes and didn't want to look at him a different way. But now it's like, I think Kyle kind of got pissed at him, because it's like, maybe because for one moment he thought the worst of his dad, but it's like, oh, my dad's actually a good person. But the fact that, or maybe it just because it just shows him how little he knows, so we'll kind of have to get back to that and see. What's interesting, though, is along with that, we see Alex finds what I can only assume is a piece of the ship or whatever that's left, because Michael has a piece of it as well. So he's never seen Michael with it, but if he ever does, that's definitely going to be interesting. So now he has a piece of it. Let's hope he never shows it to his dad, because if he does, that's just going to be an issue on its own. Which does make it clear. I mean, Jim did know about aliens and everything, so that's why he would have it. But I wonder why he kept it and didn't tell Mans about it. That's the big question. Like, I mean, obviously, like, the way Kyle's mom talked about it, it's like, oh yeah, like, your dad didn't like him at all and didn't trust him at all. They weren't friends, so maybe that's it. Maybe he was willing to see a different side to the aliens than maybe Mans was. We'll kind of have to wait and see. Another interesting thing about this is we have Isabel blacking out, and like it never came up, but like when she was waking up, we see these symbols drawn on the ground. It's like, is no one saying anything about that? I guess maybe they just never noticed it. But there's a whole thing about Michael wanting to turn himself in, but Max is like, no, you turn yourself in, people are going to look into it. The 3 mutant kids that show up, it's like, if you're an alien, there's a good chance we are too, so that won't do. But they go check on Isabel, because apparently this isn't the first time it's happened. It's like, so it happened before, and he's like, Max is saying it's like some post-traumatic stress disorder, like some form of PTSD, but it's like, well, what would that be all about? And then it's like, oh, Max and Michael are keeping a secret about Isabel, and then it gets revealed through everything, like Isabel accidentally lets it slip about the whole Max situation, which I wasn't 100% sure if Max knew about them being inside of Liz's head. It's like, no, turns out that is not the case. He had no idea until, like, he knew that they had tried it before, but didn't know that they had successfully done it years ago, like 10 years ago. So that was interesting. And Max gets super pissed, because for him it's like, you literally took away something that was so important to me. I was in love with her. And Isabel's like, no, I just thought it was a crush. Once again, I guess it's that aspect of Isabel being very controlling, that she, like, out of anyone, like, she holds on so tightly to Max. I mean, I guess because of their upbringing, them actually growing up as siblings, like, it's sad because it's come up before, but it's like she doesn't necessarily have that same connection with Michael. But the fact of the matter is, like, she went through so much, because it's like, oh, you were willing to tell her our secret, and the fact this and that, like, Max, you're the one that came up with the whole, like, we can't tell anyone type of thing, but you were going to throw it all away for some girl. But, at the time, Isabel didn't know, like, how much of true love the situation was. Also, we learned a little bit more about their abilities. One, like, with the psychic connection that Isabel creates with people, like, it does have a lasting effect. Like, once she's kind of gotten inside of someone's brain, at the very least, that connection probably stays around for a while. Maybe it's a permanent thing. It seems like probably after a good amount of time, it will eventually fade away, but that's how Max was able to find Liz in this episode. What's also interesting, though, is that they can psychically reach out to each other. I wonder, is that something only Max can do? Because Michael didn't do it. Like, maybe it's just because Max is better at it than Michael is, but he was able to kind of hear, like, I guess they have, like, a psychic connection. Like, I mean, Isabel's the only one that can get inside other people's head, but, like, maybe, like, they can psychically and telepathically communicate in that regard. Maybe it's just kind of like a little bit of a, like, beacon, like a bing in the distance, like a bing type of thing. I don't know. But what's interesting, and it ties all this up together, too, like, you had Liz talking to Grant, because hearing a recording, it's like, oh, yeah, there's 3 floating kids, and, Grant saw it. He's the alien dude running his mouth all the time about aliens. And then lo and behold, we find out a lot of interesting things. One, he got paid off, you know, he kept quiet this entire time, but like he's always running his mouth, and Liz is like, I don't get it, but it's like, you got paid to flood the airways with such conspiracy BS that eventually when real stuff does come up, no one's really going to think too much about it. It kind of drowns it out. Like he almost like a form of propaganda in a sense. You know, it's kind of interesting that that's what that's all about. And then someone shows up and shoots. Turns out it's Wyatt. And then I'm like, okay, so what part does he have to play in all of this? I'm assuming this goes back to the fact that it isn't just mains. I'm assuming that there are other... I mean, I didn't know Wyatt potentially... I mean, not unless Wyatt actually comes from a military family. The fact of the matter is his dad or mom or whoever might have been connected to this old Roswell thing. Like... So it might be something just like kind of like it's Alex and Kyle's destiny. Like, I mean, well, because, you know... Because I think you don't just necessarily have to be part of the military to be a part of this. All you had to do was be around in Roswell and be a part of that secret to be, you know, caught up in all this. So maybe that's what it is. Like it's a generational thing of like we're keeping quiet about these aliens and stuff like that. But maybe that's why Wyatt did what he did, because it's just kind of like, which is so interesting because it came out of nowhere. Because it's like, first we got the whole suspicion of him potentially being connected to Rosa's death. But then let's not forget, his sister was one of the girls that died alongside Rosa. So maybe this entire time he knew the truth. So he was blaming all this on Rosa, but in actuality, he knew the truth behind everything, then, if that's the case. Because another part of me was wondering, is like, what if that's not actually Wyatt? What if Wyatt's actually not, maybe what if the real Wyatt's dead, and that's like another alien impersonating him or something like that. I have no idea. That's what was immediately going through my mind, because like the moment his car blew up, I thought that's what was happening. Well, I think that was his car. Maybe that was someone else's. I can't remember. But the car, I thought like, oh, maybe when it's all said and done, it's like, oh, he ended up blowing himself up. I thought that was going to be like the twist, and it's like, oh, it's something running around pretending to be Wyatt. Or it's something at the time was, and maybe after, you know, his body's discovered and everything, it's like, oh, it's going to disguise itself as something else. That's what my mind was initially, but now, like, I don't know, maybe I'm starting to think maybe that is the real Wyatt, and like I said, he's just part of this whole, like, alien hunter situation, and maybe it's kind of his legacy. That's what it seems like it's all about in this regard. But it is interesting because we do see, you know, Max did show up in time to help Liz. The fact of the matter is, you know, they have this complicated situation because Liz feels a way about him, but there's also this part of her brain that's like, I know you're lying to me. I can't figure out why. And then at the same time, like, while this is all happening, turning, like, everyone's lives is literally getting turned upside down. Kyle's is in multiple ways. It got turned upside down. They got it turned right side up again, and just so much he doesn't know. And now Liz pieces it together. Like, when she felt Max's hand over her mouth and thought about it, it's like, your hand is too big for the handprint there. And the fact of the matter is, the only reason why you'd go to such an extent lie, you know, because this is all about someone that you love who committed this crime that you're trying to protect. That's what this was all about. Protecting Isabel, because she's the one. And that's what I was throwing out there like before, like something between Isabel and Rosa. Something was there when she went inside of Liz's mind and saw Rosa. It's like, I thought we were friends. It's like, because like the thing is, Rosa would go out of her way to avoid Isabel. So that's why I'm like, I think there was something more there, like, because if that is the case, I mean, it is a case of Isabel's the one who killed the three of them, that including Rosa, and it's like they covered everything up to make it look like Rosa was behind everything and stuff like that. But the question is, like, why? Like, was Rosa threatening to turn them in or something like that? I mean, maybe because at the time Isabel knew about her being tight with Jim, and maybe Jim, like her Jim being, you know, the sheriff and stuff like that. Maybe. Well, he ended up being more. Didn't he originally run for governor or something later on? But or mayor or something like that. So it's like maybe she got paranoid at that point in time, like I mean, because it seems like that's what the blackouts. Well, she blacked out back then too. So, or maybe they were talking about she blacked out sometime afterwards. But like when she ended up killing the girls, maybe she blacked out. Like something triggered the blackout. We don't know what. So. But like the girls that were, because I thought like, oh, 3 teens were levitating. I thought, you know, obviously it's like Max, Michael, and Isabel. But it turns out it was the 3 bodies. Michael was levitating them with his power to move them. And it's like, jeez. And now like Isabel's world suddenly died down in multiple ways because she tries to cover up things with Noah. But it's like Noah finds all the bottles he thinks is alcohol and stuff like that. It's like, tell me the truth. But she's like, I can't. which is so interesting because Max is the only one who's willing to cross that line. But even Michael, it seemed like he might have been joking, but I think he was more so serious about the whole, like, maybe we should tell the people that we love and care about. But for Isabel, it's kind of like, the fact is, it's like, how can I tell how Noah really feels about me when he doesn't even know the real me? I don't even know the real me because I spend so much time lying. It's so exhausting. But now it's like her and Noah in the situation they're in, and now it's like she finds out the truth of, like, wait, I'm the one that did it, but she has no memory of it. So the question is, why doesn't she have any memory of it? Once again, that's the whole thing of, like, what's the person she talked about, like, portraying her? Like, I threw it out there earlier. It's like, oh, maybe it was, like, Jim finding out that was her dad, that the fact is her dad had lied about, like, oh, you're my daughter, when in actuality, that's not his daughter, and that Jim, Kyle's dad, is actually her dad. That, or we're talking about Isabel, because, Phineas, that, I was like, was that Isabel or something like that? I don't know. Isabel seems knowledgeable enough that I would assume that might be her, but it's like, once again, like, we still have no idea what this is really all about. I mean, it's interesting, too, because now Liz knows the truth in that regard, but, like, let's not forget, Kyle also still doesn't know about Isabel and Michael being aliens, only about Max. So now, what's this going to be? Because no matter what the fact is, Max might not have killed Isabel, but he still covered it up. But it was to protect someone that's important to him, to protect his sister. So it's a whole complicated can of worms. Poor Grant is dead. Anything that he might have really known goes with him. Like, why Wyatt's connected to all this. Like, what in actuality is going on? Let's not also forget, we haven't seen it this episode, but let's not forget, Cam is under man's control now. He's like, oh, I'll help out that friend of yours, Charlie, so we still have to tackle that. So there's so much we still don't know, but I'm very interested to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode of all this. It's definitely going to be very, very interesting. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.